Welcome to this laid-back edition of the Critic's Corner. I'm Andrew Branca with the Waxahachie Sun, and I'm here once again with my friend, colleague, and fellow movie aficionado and lover, Mr. David Dunn with Southlake Style Magazine. How's it hanging?
It's hanging, Andy. It's hanging. Low and slow and whatever else it hangs. I don't know.
Okay, well, that's good to know. I'm glad you're doing fine. This movie we're doing this week is one that you can watch from home. It's through the Amazon streaming service, featuring our good friend Star-Lord, Mr. Chris Pratt. It's called The Tomorrow War.
Okay, none of you are my child. Has anyone seen Miri?
Aww.
We are fighting a war 30 years in the future.
Is this a joke?
Our enemy is not human. We need you to fight.
I got drafted.
I will be back.
Why is this happening? What about the teacher's deferment and the veterans deferment?
If I don't go, they're going to draft you in my place. But if something does happen to me, you and Miri will be taken care of.
If something happens to you, Dan, 70% of draftees do not return.
Sometimes a man does what's best for his family, not himself.
Move your shirt, please.
What's this for?
It was just a test.
Oh, a seatbelt. Was it a driving test?
No, you don't have jokes in the future? This device facilitates your jump to and from the future war.
1 minute to jump.
Oh, here, buddy. Take that. You just whip it around like that.
How are you so calm?
Long story.
You ex-military?
Yeah. Kind of a short story, I guess.
3, 2, 1. In 11 months' time, all human beings in the future will be wiped from the face of the earth. Unless you help us.
I was trying to save my daughter. If I gotta save the world to save her, then I'm gonna do it.
This is the end. The human species will disappear from the face of the earth. We are literally living on borrowed time.
There's still a chance that we can stop this war from ever happening. So we gotta fight.
Well, it's nice knowing you.
So why don't you tell our audience a little bit about this flick?
Yes, sir. So The Tomorrow War, as you said, stars our favorite Guardian of the Galaxy, Chris Pratt. The film follows this retired soldier who is also a high school biology teacher, wants to be more in life, wants to, have higher importance, higher calling, that whole sort of thing. When all of a sudden, out of nowhere, soldiers from the future come back in time to his timeline and say, hey, we're fighting an extinction type war against this vicious alien race that kind of looks like a white version of those aliens from Avatar. And we have to wipe them out before they wipe us out. So instead of, just fighting them, man versus monster, we're going to go back in time and recruit all of these, dispensable soldiers to fight our battle for us in the future. So hence the title, The Tomorrow War. Takes place 30 years after the events that this movie takes place, which is convoluted to think about, to say the least. I'm going to start with what I liked in this movie. I liked Chris Pratt. Chris Pratt, I think, can be a real hit or miss. Sometimes he's in really good movies, like in Guardians of the Galaxy. Obviously, he got super popular through that series for a reason. He's really great, charismatic, and very likable. He brings that same sort of energy to this project. Not like Jurassic World, where he's just standing there staring at fake dinosaurs. But I did like him in this movie. He was a very sympathetic character. He was a really good action hero. He was also kind of a really sensitive family man. I think it's interesting that this is mostly just a ridiculous, over-the-top action movie. And he brings some really great dramatic beats to this movie that I wasn't expecting from him. Like, there was some moments where he's clearly pulling out a lot and giving a very effortful performance. And he didn't have to. He could have easily, kind of phoned this role in like he did in Passengers with Jennifer Lawrence. But he actually gives a really good performance here. And I think in terms of leads, this is probably one of his better performances to date. I don't know how much that says about him, but I think he was very good in the movie.
No, I would agree. I thought Chris Pratt was good. It's, he definitely has a lot of talent where he can do anything from comedic stuff as, where you got to start with Parks and Rec on the small screen on TV, to dramatic roles, to action movies. Guardians of the Galaxy is the prime example of that. I think sometimes writers don't know how to write for him exactly. I think he's kind of not difficult person, but just a difficult fit in a casting selection. I really like him. I think he's he has that very plucky kind of personality that always seems to work really well. He kind of reminds me of the gentleman that played Chris Secord in The Rocketeer. I mean, he just has that personality to him that is definitely it's very likable on screen. You can't help to like the guy, and the dramatic side to his ability definitely came through in this film, which I really enjoyed. I think the main problem I had with this film, I think the first two acts were very strong. It was a interesting premise for a movie. I mean, I thought for the first two acts of the film, it was well executed. You could see where maybe it borrowed several ideas from other franchises, Inception, Aliens, Predator, Aliens versus Predator. I mean, you could kind of see that a little bit, but I mean, that's cinema. A lot of good ideas are recycled over and over again. The third act, it just felt like the writers and the director didn't really know where to go, and to me, that's where it fell apart. And
the third act was ridiculous.
Yeah, it fell apart in great fashion. It was just they're like, "Oh crap, we need an ending. We better give you one." So here.
Yeah. So okay, and this is what's unfortunate about movies like this, because it's hard to talk about problems you have with the third act when that's literally the end of the movie. But I'll do my best to be vague here. Like you said, the first two acts are very well written. It does a really good job kind of illustrating who this character is, does a good job kind of introducing this premise and the kind of rules of this premise. It does a really good job, thrusting you into the future, and, you're caught up in this whole alien plight, and it's stressful, it's high stakes, it's anxious. The first scene where they introduced the aliens was actually done very, very well. I was wondering how they were going to introduce them, but it was actually very slow. It was very gradual. It was kind of like Alien, like you mentioned, how they kind of avoided showing them for the longest time until when you finally do see them, you see how grotesque and gratuitous and how disturbing they are. You're like, oh crap. And you're screaming at the heroes to just shoot at them and kill them on screen. That was very engaging. That was very well done. That was built up very, very wonderfully. The third act, by comparison, I think it's funny how in the second act, they build up like the foot soldiers, like even the foot soldiers of these White Walkers are just these terrifying monsters. They're really hard to kill. Their weak points are very hard to target. They're built up as this really, really big threat. And they're really kind of illustrated how high stakes of an enemy they are. In the third act, the very end of the movie, Chris Pratt and his dad, played pretty smugly by J.K. Simmons in this movie. They're fighting off against a female White Walker, which, as we're told earlier in the movie, is like, it's kind of like the mini boss of the White Walkers, right? Like the foot soldiers are the guys, the females, the queens are like the really big ones. They're like the, oh crap, I'm screwed kind of aliens. And Chris Pratt is just sitting there punching this alien, like the queen of this hive, and he's winning. He's just like, die, and just punching. He's punching an alien. And I'm like, how are you not dead? If I was doing this, half my body would be chewed off of me right now. Like, how is this happening? And that kind of speaks to the sloppiness of the third act. Like, clearly, this movie had a very specific part where it could have cut off and it would have been fine. I think you would have had a very thoughtful, kind of confrontation on what family is, what life is, what life's purpose is, what kind of life fulfillment means. I think you could have cut off at a very specific point at this movie and it would have been fine. But they had to go another 40 minutes because, oh, it's an action movie. Let's throw in another 40 minutes of stupid action just because we kind of need that to keep people engaged. And I'm like, no, you don't. Literally one of the best science fiction films released last decade, Arrival, was a very slow and gradual, build-up sort of a movie. And that was 1,000 times more engaging than this thing was.
Yeah, definitely. And I think I know what part you're talking about to be cut off at. And I'm not going to say it because spoilers. But yeah, I'm in agreement with you. That had the potential to do so much better. And no, the fail bus definitely arrived and picked everybody up and took them to this horrible ending. I was really rooting for this to be something good. And then when we got to that point, I was like, oh, well, okay, well, this is how they're going to end this. And no, we have more movie because, well, we budgeted we budgeted this much from the studio, so let's go spend this. And like, okay, not that great. I mean, it definitely did have its cliches to it. The estranged father-son relationship, to name one of the many that were in there. And they definitely played up on that quite a bit towards the end. It definitely could have been better on a lot of levels. I agree with you.
I feel like if they focused more on the science fiction aspect of the movie, like the contemplative aspects of it, I think it could have been a much more thoughtful, a more engaging, a much more impactful movie. The last act of this movie basically confirms, oh no, we're here to feed you generic action down your throat, whether you like it or not. Here's your Michael Bay knockoff of a movie. And I do think it's interesting. Obviously, the writers and director Chris McKay, they didn't really have a strong idea of how to end this movie, but I think even sprinkled throughout the movie, they struggle with how to handle some parts. Like there's one character in this movie played by VP actor Sam Richardson, and he does not fit in this movie at all. Like all the other actors, whether it's Chris Pratt or J.K. Simmons or Yvonne Strahovski, which I thought she was really, really good in this movie. Sam Richardson is just kind of the shoe-in comedic relief that doesn't really fit inside of this really anxious, high-stakes sort of action movie where soldiers are just getting axed left and right. Like, he just coins in like these really quippy little one-liners And I'm just like, this feels like this belongs in a Marvel movie. This is so out of place. It feels like it belongs in another movie outside of this. And I'm just like, if you're going to have humor in the movie, you can integrate that fluidly into characters like Chris Pratt. He's, like you said before, he's demonstrated his comedic chops, he's demonstrated his dramatic chops. He can do both very nicely. But just having this character in there that's just this nerdy little wuss that just is so anxious about everything. He doesn't fit in the movie. He doesn't fit with the rest of the characters.
Yeah, it was almost like the writer said, well, here's the humor, enjoy. And I also found it very humorous that we have these, ordinary civilians who are, conscripted into the military, drafted, and they get into a combat zone and they're experts. I some of the scenes in there, I found that just humorous on a personal level. I mean, I'm not a veteran or anything like that, but I'm thinking, my experience in combat is limited to like Call of Duty. I mean, I don't think I could be thrust into combat with an AR-15 and really succeed. I'm kind of more of the Zombieland model. The first people to go is the fatties, and that definitely would be me.
Man, you and I would be screwed if we got drafted. Like, if we had to fight White Walkers in the future,
I'd be dead. I'd be dead. The massive killing machines that are aliens, that they would see me and think Golden Corral.
Yeah. And again, like, I agree with you. Like, it feels silly that ordinary civilians, it makes sense for Chris Pratt and J.K. Simmons, because as the movie displays, they're veterans. But for other people that are like Joe Schmoes in the street to be like, we gotta blow up the ship, let's do an ex-con,
it's like, all right, Steve, your experience at Foot Locker is really going to help here. just sit down and let the professionals do this.
One part of it specifically, I was like, okay, we have this information. We know what we need to do regarding this particular scenario. We can call in the government to pull out the big guns and eradicate this sort of thing, take care of this sort of problem, or we can just take care of it ourselves. Who needs the government? We got this. And I'm just like, I understand bureaucracy can be annoying, but the war doesn't take place till 30 years later. You don't think you can resolve the problem in that time? Okay, sure. Let's go into a generic action sequence, because why not?
Well, one thing I think I would have done, and just because I'm a coward, these guys were sent on deployments for a week, and after a week, if they were alive, they basically sent them home. I would have found a closet, packed some MREs, and just locked the door and be like, hey,
literally,
I can wait out a week here.
Literally. And one of the characters did that in this movie. So if one character can do that, like, what's to stop several other people from doing that? Like,
exactly.
I don't know. This movie does have some strong moments. Like I said, I did love the buildup in the second act quite a bit. I think Chris Pratt is a very good actor in this movie. And I think some of the interactions between himself and Yvonne Strahovski and J.K. Simmons, those are really good, genuine moments that I feel like elevated this movie above its mediocrity. It doesn't change this movie's mediocrity. And that's mostly due to the last half of this movie. The last 40 minutes of this movie. You didn't need that. You could have easily had this movie be a 2-hour picture and it would have been stronger for it.
Well, yeah, let's just take it for what it's worth. It's a high C, low B sci-fi / action movie. Take it for what it's worth. It's definitely not an Oscar contender. I would have liked to have seen it maybe on the big screen, because that's what a Paramount had originally planned it for before selling it to Amazon for to be streamed. But that's just me. But I think we have to give this film a rating here. So on a scale of 1 to 10, what do you give this?
You said the perfect word, Andy. You said high C, low B. That is exactly what I'm giving it. I'm giving it a 6 out of 10. It's decent, but forgettable, and that's always disappointing.
Yeah, and I think we're going to be. This is one of those rare times that we're both in agreement. I give it a 6 out of 10 as well. Yeah, it's a throwaway movie. You're not going to really say, "Oh, I really want to watch that again." It's not like the 1979 film Alien, where it's a masterful artwork piece and it's just fantastic. And I can't tell you how many times I've watched that over the years because it's a great film, even though it's decades old now.
Yeah, some movies like Alien, like Interstellar, like Predator do stand the test of time. This movie you put on for background noise as on a weeknight.
Yeah, you're cleaning out the closet in your house. You have the vacuum going. Yeah. It'll serve a purpose as well. I don't know if I'd go with Interstellar, just because it's to me it's a little bit too new to know that if it will hold up that well.
True, but regardless, Interstellar makes a better impact in this movie.
Yeah, I would agree. I would agree. I mean, and plus you have Matthew McConaughey in space saying, "All right, all right, all right." So that's always entertaining.
I will say, the worst thing you could do with this movie, the absolute worst thing you can do with this movie, is give it a sequel, which unfortunately is on the way.
Oh, God.
So
Really?
I don't want a sequel. Yes, I don't want a sequel. I don't think this movie deserves a sequel. It is inevitably going to get one. I am almost completely certain it's going to be worse than this movie. And considering how...
Well, it kind of reminds me of them making the sequel to Joe Dirt. Really? Do we need to know more about Joe Dirt? I mean, no. One movie was enough, and it was funny, but a sequel, really? No, I'm sorry. Yeah. The Mullet Man must go away, and we must not know more about him. And I definitely won't be tuning in for a sequel. I mean, how many movies do we need to have about grown-ups with Adam Sandler?
How many movies? True. How many movies do we need to prevent a future war? 1. We need 1. We don't need like 5.
Yeah. Well, on that hilarious note, this is going to do this week's edition of the Critics Corner. So if you have any thoughts, sessions, or comments, feel free and send us a shout or a like on Facebook or direct message or email. We'd be glad to talk movies with you and get with you. So that's going to do it for today. So you guys have a great weekend, and we'll see you back next week here in the corner.
See y'all next time.